progress of that project. It's moving forward, which is good.
Oops. Well, good evening, everyone. It's 5:30. We're going to go ahead and kick off our pre-commission agenda. I don't have any updates to share other than thank you to the staff that prepared and presented to each of us independently on our first ever, meeting with each of the staff as separate commissioners to understand what's going on in our districts. I hope you all thought that was really helpful, and I certainly did. So thank you for the staff for preparing that. Any other feedback about that? Do we want to continue that? I do want to.
Absolutely. Madam President, I really appreciate this. I just consider this the no surprises meeting because, I'll be going to a neighborhood association meetings or other neighborhood meetings and people come up to me and say, what's going on here? And it's sort of like, sometimes I have no idea where this is. So it really is helpful just to get the details on stuff that we know we've approved years ago, but where it is in the process, we don't necessarily know. And it starts to happen. Signs pop up all the time saying public hearing or public notice related to the city, but we also have a role in some of those. So it's very helpful. Thank you.
Well, and as someone that, I've gotten requests or calls, and these are projects that I hadn't approved, right? But they were from previous folks, right? So I especially had no recollection or understanding of what was going on. So I think this is going to be really helpful for us too. Any other thoughts?
Well, I had to bribe my guys to report that I asked intelligent questions. So.
I don't know how to respond to that.
He's laughing because he knows it's true.
I'll just agree that that's really very helpful, and appreciate staff doing that, and would definitely like to continue it as well.
Great. Perfect. All right. Any questions about the agenda? We saw your note, Commissioner McKinney, about one of our consent items. But if there's no other questions about the agenda, I'll turn it over to Director Wong.
Madam President, Commissioners, thank you. Good evening. Before we start, though, I'd like to let you know that we have a very special and distinguished visitor with us today. And she's sitting in the back, I think over my shoulder here. That is Shandy's mom.
All right.
Shandy's going to kill me.
Well, and what's her name? Renee. Are you from Potlatch?
Yes.
Well, it's always great to welcome another North Idaho gal down here. So thank you for making the trip.
Okay, Commissioners, as I think I shared with you earlier, some great news. Always with the WTS awards that have been announced right now, we did very well, as we always do. Just as a recap, Ryan Head was awarded the Ray LaHood, Secretary Ray LaHood Award for Leadership. Shandy Lamb was awarded Woman of the Year for WTS. And that's the first time I've ever seen her quiet. Kind of interesting. And of course, Sherry Knaus was awarded the Rosa Parks Diversity Award. Incredibly important. All three will be going on for the international competition, and we'll keep you posted as we go through that. As you know, we had a little bit of snow the last couple of weeks, and our Jennifer is going to be hosting next week a Winter Ops Storm Hot Wash with all of our team members to see what we did right, what we might want to do a little bit better, some thoughts across the board, maybe some different pieces of equipment we may want to look at to increase our capabilities along stream. But as important, I spoke with Jeremy Maxwell earlier this week, and we had a good conversation. A good conversation. And so when we are done with this hot wash, he has already asked, and we've scheduled it for their March meeting, to bring that hot wash to our ADA committee and provide them the opportunity to also put input as to where, what, and how we may want to address going into the future. He's very excited about that. And I did learn that they have been working with Boise State, and there's a group of engineers there that are trying to develop some protocols where shovels can be attached to wheelchairs, and so that our wheelchair citizens can help. Jeremy is incredibly excited about this. I don't know how it's going to look or whatever, but I think it was a great idea for innovation. But we'll be coming back to you in March and let you know what our ADA committee's insights were and how we can incorporate that moving forward. And then we'll be coming to you after that with recommendations and such to go forward. I'd like to remind the commission that on the 29th of January, you have a Meridian joint meeting. It's at 6 p.m. at City Hall. The agenda is in front of you. And it will be just an absolutely great session, there's no doubt. And on Wednesday, the 31st of January, we have two meetings in Eagle, one at 9:30 and one at 3 p.m. And this is the construction meeting at the 9:30 for businesses, and then for 3 o'clock for all the public and such. We'll have an update as to what we're going to say and what's going to be out there to you all before that, but I do plan to attend both, as does the key members of our staff going forward. And then on 1 February, that next Thursday, we're hosting the Commercial Developers Advisory Committee. That'll be at, I believe, at 10 o'clock at the Orchard Complex. And then just as a reminder, the staff and I and Commissioner Goldthorpe will be at the Southwest Boise Construction Community meeting. It's at the Amity Elementary School, if I'm not mistaken, starts at 6 p.m. And we'll be sharing all of the insights that we know, what's currently happening, and what we plan to have happen for the next years going out, so that there are no surprises, and the community has a great opportunity to ask questions, throw spears, whatever it is they would like to do. But I think it's most important to get in front of them and say, here's what we know, here's ground truth, and go from there. But it should be a very, very good meeting, and I understand it's being well publicized, and there's a lot of energy and enthusiasm for this session. So it should be a very, very good event. So commissioners, in a nutshell, that's my director's report for today. I can stand for any questions you have, or you are on break for a while.
Thanks, Director. Any questions? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. We'll be at ease until 6. All right, good evening. It's now 6 o'clock. I'm going to call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone in person and online. Please join us in standing for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. The first order of business is to adopt the agenda.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. The next order of business is to adopt the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered routine and are action items unless otherwise noted. The consent agenda is enacted by one motion. There is no separate discussion on items on the consent agenda. If a commissioner or citizen would like, they may request any item be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. I don't think Commissioner Kenny, did you want to remove it? Okay.
Madam President,
Yes.
I'd like to say one thing about items 4 and 5.
Sure.
Concerning items 4 and 5 on our consent agenda, which have to do with a dramatic increase in the cost of hiring private contractors to do a lot of our snow removal in the residential areas. There are a lot of folks that have, this year it's been very different than 2017. And we have, we are authorizing an increase in our budget for that from $20,000 for each of these two contractors up to $150,000 for each of these two contractors. And if you take a look around the community in the residential areas, I think you'll see an amazing improvement between what the HOAs are doing and what we're doing and what our contractors are doing this year. The roads are, the plowing situation and taking care of the winter ops is absolutely improved. And I'd like to thank our staff, Jennifer, and all the maintainers that are working 24/7, 12 on, 12 off for weeks at a time, for their efforts on this behalf. That's all.
Okay.
Madam
Is there,
President?
Commissioner McKinney?
First, let me thank the staff for providing some additional information regarding item number 3 on the consent agenda. That being said, I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
Thank you. Any other discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. All right, so we do not have any regular agenda items, so we'll move over to public communications. Ms.
And
Stacy.
yes, Jody, we have her signed up to testify.
Welcome, Jody. Hi. You please state your name and address for the record.
Yeah, and do you want my work address or my home address for this testimony?
Work is fine.
Okay, so it's Jody Peterson Steigers, 1620 West River Street, Boise 83702. And I'm with Interfaith Sanctuary Homeless Shelter. And I am very excited to be in front of you all. I've met a few of you and worked with a few of you. I do have a PowerPoint that, do I control or do you control? Got it? Okay. Okay. So the first slide, I just wanted to introduce you to Jeffrey Garrett. Jeffrey was a guest at Interfaith Sanctuary, and he was killed by a car while he was walking across the street on Americana Boulevard. He was very important to our community. He was a peacemaker, and he just wanted to make sure everyone was okay. His favorite quote was, "He who has a why to live for can bear almost anyhow." His favorite musician was Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. And his favorite book was Thus Spoke Zarathustra. He was very well read. He had his own business. Homelessness was not, he was not defined by it, but he was killed because of where he lived. And so today I just wanted to bring him to life for all of you. I know that if his death could make some changes happen on Americana, it would be very meaningful for him and for all of us. So, this is a map. Do I point at any?
Let's make sure it's on.
Oh. So this is a map from ITD. It basically shows the 3 severe or life-altering incidents that resulted in disabling injuries. Those are in red dots, and 2 other serious injuries, which are in orange dots on Americana between 2018 and 2022. Jeff's photo's there, but he's actually not a data point yet because he happened in 2020. We lost him in 2023, but you can see how concentrated these incidents are. And I think that we kind of understand why. And I wanted to come and introduce it to you. I'm no expert, but I thought if I put it in front of you, perhaps we could talk about like the cause and what we could do. So this is more data, and it's actually data that doesn't just talk about the 3 fatalities, but it also talks about either serious injury, which there were between 2017 and 2023, 3 people hit and killed, 9 reported incidents through police for cars hitting pedestrian, where there was either serious or notable injury, and then 11 unreported incidents where guests of interfaith were struck by a car while either on bike or foot, and we actually tended to them. The injuries weren't too severe, but they were still part of pedestrian car interaction. And so I thought that's a good data point for you guys to know too, because that's probably pretty unseen. And what that does is it might be a sprained ankle, it might be a concussion, it might be a broken arm, but it is just another barrier for someone who's in a shelter trying to find their way out of homelessness. And mobility issues are a real challenge in that area as it is. We don't want to actually be setting them up to create more mobility issues. So this is a video. How do you think I make it play? No, maybe this button?
Maybe your mouse could click it.
And this is just to show driving 16th as it turns into Americana. You'll see that I'm going to go through 2 lights, Main Street, and then I'm going to go through this next light. And my speed's at 35 miles an hour. That's the posted speed on this road. And then there's going to be 2 crosswalks with no stop signs or lights, and the overpass is literally shading the crosswalk until you're right there. And so the reason why many of our homeless guests utilize a crossover as opposed to the crosswalk is because they've almost been hit so often using the crosswalk. They're now finding their own path that they think is safer, but it's not, because the cars are accelerating because that road is slightly inclined. And so they're thinking that they're making a safer choice by not using the crosswalk because you can't see it. And so the next photo is me. And we did this stopgap photography to show how long it actually took for me to become visible to a car, because there's a sidewalk with a ramp. So anyone that's using a walker or a wheelchair has to go all the way to the end of that curb and then come down and begin crossing at the very beginning of the crosswalk where the cars are turning right off of Front onto Americana. And I actually was almost hit by 3 cars while walking and being photographed because the car couldn't see me until where the arrow is pointed. And then it hit its brakes and stopped. So I do think the visibility plays a big role in why we're having so much confrontation with car in person. So I guess I'm here because I'm all about solutions and collaborations. And I thought that if I brought this information to you, I know that there's long-term goals and there's budgets and everything. Tonight, really, I'm just appealing for a short-term solution that could enhance the safety of that population that mostly is made up by almost a disabled or lacking mobility audience. So I saw this as like some options where like, is there a way to light the overpass to illuminate the crosswalk or flashing lights ahead of it? I don't know. I looked at pictures and I'm like, these are neat, but like, it's just not my expertise. But what I would ask is it to be considered that in this moment, looking at a short-term solution to increase the chances of people not being injured by cars. And then as a long-term project, I know there's going to be a lot of change in that area. I appreciate that long-term is probably a longer conversation. So that's my presentation. And if you have any questions, thank you and thoughts.
Thank you, Jody. And before I turn over to the commissioners, I just want to highlight just really quickly. I want to invite staff to come up too and respond, because since, you know, you and I and Commissioner Gold went on that walk with you, we came back to staff and worked through that list of options, which you've illuminated a couple of them that we talked about.
Yeah.
And so I think, Matt, if you could speak to some of those other shorter, medium-term ones that we talked about, he can speak to where we're at with some of those. And I just really appreciate you making the time to come up and do this, because I know that it's not easy seeing and working with this population day in and day out and not see some big changes in terms of the road infrastructure. But I want to tell you though, Jody, we have been working really hard behind the scenes, doing that research, going through these various processes to work through and making some of those improvements that you highlighted. It's just hard sometimes to be able to like share it out all the time. Like we actually have something coming up here in the next few weeks. So I just want to say, I appreciate your due diligence and your passion and your expertise to be at the table to help us find those solutions. And especially as we come up with a longer term, because it's really going to take that overhaul to make a massive behavioral change that's actually going to make a bigger difference in terms of safety. But you're right, we need to find those shorter term solutions. So Matt, do you mind coming up and sharing what's in the queue right now? And then Jody, we can go from there.
Do you want my space?
If that's okay.
You may have it.
Do you mind sharing, Jody? Thank you.
I do not.
No. Thanks, Jody.
Matt Deegan, Manager of Safety Engineering with ACHD, President Pickering and Commissioners. So we have recently completed plans for pedestrian improvements at both the 15th and 16th and front intersections. Plans include ramp improvements at all four corners of both intersections and RRFBs on the crossings of 15th and 16th, both on the north and the south sides of the road.
So Matt, do you mind explaining? So that's similar, or how different would that be from the image that Jody shared?
Very similar, except the lights would not be within the pavement. They would be on poles mounted adjacent to the road.
So
I think that's even better. Okay. Good idea.
With that, so with plans done, we'll be going out to bid here in the next couple of weeks with getting a contractor under contract. It should be a early to mid-April start of construction.
Is there anything else though? Because we also explored, and I know Ryan isn't here, but he also did some research on lighting.
So,
Yep.
So with our project, we are lighting on the north segments. We couldn't put luminaires on the south side because of the structure with the overpass.
Could you mind sharing a little bit more to that? Like
we are improving lighting, and we should be able to reach the south side of the intersections with the luminaires that we'll put on the north side. But because the bridge structure is so close to those corners, we couldn't put our standard luminaire pole there. It just physically won't fit.
And why did we have to do luminaires versus some other type of lighting that would be attached to the overpass, for instance?
We didn't evaluate looking at anything with the overpass. We were just trying to go as fast as we could to get plans done so we wouldn't have to work with other agencies.
Because that would be ITD, right?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So that speaks to the lighting piece, Jody, and then the crossings.
Do you have
Yeah, come on up. Yeah, so folks can hear you online too. Thank you, Matt.
So Matt, will you stay here? And can I just show you this? And then, because I don't understand what you're saying, can you show me based on this crosswalk where the lighting actually will go?
Yes, so the lighting will be on the north sides of the intersection. So I believe I'm not sure which one we're looking at here. Are we looking at this is 16th, right?
Yeah, this is Front Street and this is 16th turning into Americana.
Yeah, it's a 40-foot pole on this corner over here. That
So
would be
across
the northeast corner.
Across from this crosswalk, not on this crosswalk.
Not on the south crosswalk, it's on the north crosswalk.
So how am I allowed to do this?
Well, I think the nuance is that we can work offline.
Oh,
And
yeah, let's do that.
Let's do that.
Yeah.
Yeah, but I think Jody, did you have any other bigger questions that we could?
No, I think just better understanding what the plan is and if that's actually going to attack the most crucial visibility issue, which is, it is the crosswalk under the overpass. It's not the crosswalk on the other side of Front.
So we can work with you. We'll make sure that that's
perfect. But thank you so much for letting me know about the work. That's exciting. It feels good.
Commissioners, any other comments? Commissioner Goldthorpe?
I had a few, but everything's pretty much been illuminated by both of you.
Thank you.
Commissioner Hanson?
Yeah, I just want to thank you, Jody, and I appreciate the long term as well as the short term. And in the long term, we've been looking at 16th Street a little further to the north because the configuration, how drivers view that is really how they've approached it blocks away. And
right.
So, and part of the challenge with safety has to do with raising the question of why does it need to be one way? But it's really critical. We're not going to change it unless there's a request that from the city and CCDC, which also manages property in that area. So it's really important that all those partners outside of the immediate area recognize that it's a corridor that needs to be evaluated and raise questions about whether it makes sense to actually return it as it once was to two-way, which are safer streets than having 3 one-way streets with one-way lanes going for many blocks.
Well, really quick, Jody, I think Commissioner Gold has an update though on like that bigger piece of the coordinated agencies. So Commissioner Gold, do you mind sharing what Tom might have shared with you earlier or no?
Yeah, and I mentioned this to Jetty before the meeting too, but that the city of Boise is through the urban renewal district. They're taking a look at that portion of the corridor on, I think it was human scaled. I don't remember exactly what staff called it, but we talked about it. And then in our integrated 5-year work plan too, there's a concept a couple of years out that will look from Americana all the way to 4th Street. So taking into consideration the entire corridor.
Yeah, we did see the prioritization list from the city of Boise, and it put Americana as like 17 with a estimated look at in 2028. And so that was a little nerve wracking. That's why I came with short term, because we can't wait that long to try and figure out how to fix some of it. But long term, I get that, but I'm hoping that the illumination, at least in some of those safety factors, will be considered before that. Yeah.
Yes. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Jody. Thanks, Matt. Is there anyone else that would like to testify? Come on up, Clancy.
Clancy Anderson, 4611 North Shirley Avenue, Boise. I came back this week. I was going to talk about one thing. I'm probably going to talk about something different now. Commissioners and Madam President, sorry. I get frustrated. I get eager. You know, you see my emails, you see my communications, and I do want something to happen, and I think something's going to happen. I listened to Director Wong's report that in March, something's going to happen with the ADA, with their hot wash. And maybe, obviously with knowing full well that using the MIG audit, you guys have to do this. This has to be completed. And I think the commission and the ADA committee and the staff should have a goal of having something not maybe solid by next winter, but having something a plan at least that you can say, we're working on it. And part of the reason I decided to come back this week, I took a picture. I think I sent it to Commissioner Goldthorpe. It was a bus stop. It's on State Street. It's that one right by Albertsons at 36. Sorry, it's not the bus stop. It's the crosswalk right there, the improved crossing. And obviously that's a kind of a busy area, and a lot of jaywalkers even with the improved crossing. I did see some jaywalking, and they weren't jaywalking because it was shorter. They were jaywalking because they didn't want to step over the snowbank. And there still is a snowbank at that improved crossing today. It's pretty small, but it's still there. And so I do think it's something very important that needs to get addressed. I know that people they're working, to get the roads plowed, but it's been 7 days at least since the last significant snow. And there needs to be a plan in effect for later on. And so I hope to see that get done. And like I said, the MIG audit kind of outlines everything that needs to be done. Also I would encourage, I didn't see this in the MIG audit, but look at your policy. There's some policy issues that need to be taken care of. In the 9,000 maintenance. 90042 is a personal pet peeve of mine. And you guys should have thrown it out when you bought your first mini sweeper. So you can't do, it says the district shall not be responsible for snow and ice removal and bike lanes. That one's pretty obvious. The other obvious one that I think would probably not hold up in court is 90112. The district assumes no responsibility or liability or for any harm or damage caused as a result of any public right-of-way that becomes blocked by plowed snow. That's against ADA. That's against, everything about making transportation options available for all. So that's what I have to say this week, and I look forward to March. I'll try to go to that meeting, even though I'm not part of that committee, but anyway, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Stacy, is there anyone online? Okay. Well, with that, meeting adjourned. We're going to move right into our work session, and that is the design consultant fees. And Diane is not here, so we have Justin. Up to present.
Good evening, Madam President, members of the Commission. As noted, I'm just filling in for Diane Bevins. She's the expert on all of this, and unfortunately, you get to hear me tonight. So I'll do my best to hold it together. For the record, my name is Justin Lucas. I'm the Deputy Director of Planning and Projects here at the Highway District. So at the Commission's direction, we have put together a little discussion here on consultant design fees primarily, and then we'll also talk about ACHD's in-house design capabilities. We do want to hit these key topics, which are design cost primarily, project elements and complexity, which are directly related to design cost, current market and economic conditions, and then I will discuss ACHD's in-house design capabilities and resources. So as noted, and I think one of the drivers for this conversation today, costs are up. There's no doubt about that. We did a look back over the last 5 years at consultant rates, which we track very carefully. And we can report today that since in the last 5 years, essentially since pre-COVID 2019, we've seen approximately a 40% increase in consultant rates. Rates are one element of the calculation. The other key element in design cost calculation is the amount of hours or the level of effort that it takes to actually design the project. So those are the two things that work together to essentially provide the overall cost. Hours have also increased, and I'll get into a little bit more detail on why, especially related to all the things we deal with here at the Highway District, but rates are up and hours are up. If you combine the two things, that's where I think the director mentioned about a 50 to 60% overall increase in design cost. And part of that is rates, part of that is the amount of hours that are going into the projects themselves. I would say this increase is not unique to transportation consultants. I think these types of increases are consistent with a lot of consulting work across different entities and project types throughout the United States. And it is similar to ACHD and the broader market. ACHD's labor rates have increased significantly since 5 years ago. Not that different than what we're seeing in the consultant rates. So to dive a little deeper on project elements and complexity, and this is, I think, an important part of the discussion today. Under the direction of the commission, ACHD has changed some of its project philosophy, and that does have a kind of domino effect on design and what we do on some of our projects. The go-in once and holistic maintenance strategy, as we discussed when we rolled that strategy out under the direction of the commission, more elements are included in the projects, and the projects have expanded in scope, which creates more hours in the design. When you're adding in more elements, it's just increased hours in the design. Now, I think the commission and staff, as we've discussed this, we believe that upfront cost has a long-term benefit. And so there is, I don't want to present this all as cost only. There are benefits and there are reasons why we have some of these increased complexity. And so, but I'm just trying to connect the dots when it comes to some of the design costs. Also, I think ACHD has significantly increased its public outreach and enhanced that process. We typically rely, especially on all of our capital projects, on consultants to help us with that. We just simply don't have the in-house staff to perform all of those tasks, including 3D visualizations. I think you've seen some of the videos that we've put together, the flyovers of projects, helping the community, perceive and visualize what the project is going to look like. There's also been a lot more one-on-one meetings, door-to-door style outreach on some projects, which takes a lot of time, once again, increased hours that go into the project designs. We do a lot of alternative analysis, especially looking at different elements, options for pedestrian bicycle infrastructure, different cross sections of roadways, and all of that, once again, increases project complexity. Stormwater requirements, pedestrian detour plans, just a few other elements that go into what we've seen on the project complexity side. To show that to you graphically, and we've shown this before, years ago, ACHD, when we would go in for a maintenance project, we would focus primarily on the curb ramps as required by the Americans with Disabilities Act and the pavement. And that would be our focus, and we'd get in and we would do those projects. These projects typically had almost no public involvement, and the design was relatively straightforward because we weren't looking at broader property impacts. We were very focused on what we were doing. Now, with our going once philosophy, we're looking at not only the ramps, but maybe including bulb outs. We're looking at traffic calming elements. We're looking at crossings. We're looking at bikeway design. We've included driveway approaches, private driveway approaches that are not ADA compliant. We're looking at those now. And each of those driveways requires a specific amount of design to bring it up to ADA standards through the process. So this is all of the things that we're working on now. Once again, I think all of these are good things and things that are positive for the highway district, but there is a balance when it comes to the cost when we get into this type of a project. I do want to just mention broader market and economic conditions. I think it's clear that there's been higher wages and inflation across all sectors, and civil engineering is not immune to that. We also believe, and this is, I think, based on some national data and articles that we've seen, there is right now in the United States a very high demand for infrastructure design. Not only locally here in Idaho because of the amount of infrastructure projects that we have and ITD has and the cities have, which is probably by far the most in the last 20 years. It's not even close. But the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act at the federal level has increased the amount of design happening all over the country as that infrastructure as that rolls out. Just now, all those consulting contracts are being entered into. For example, the RAISE grant that ACHD received falls under that category. That's a $6 million design contract. It's one of the largest design contracts in the history of the Highway District, and it's associated with the Infrastructure Investment and Jobs Act. And then overall, we're not only competing with other public sector entities, we're competing with private development, who also has a lot of civil engineering work associated with major developments. Broader job markets, Idaho remains a relatively small job market. And the amount of engineering students graduating from Idaho schools is not very high. So we're competing with Utah, Washington, Oregon, the broader Northwest to attract engineering talent here in the state of Idaho. And we have struggled to fill our design and engineering positions at the Highway District. Some of those positions including designers, draftspeople, civil engineers, professional engineers. It's been a struggle, and those are some of the positions that we've had to incentivize with hiring bonuses and things like that to try and attract talent, which has all been discussed previously. This is just an article from just October of 2023 that we found from the Seattle Times, just the Northwest. Interesting. This is kind of a national topic right now, and it was interesting. Just in a quick Google search, I was able to locate this, and I talked about it with Diane a little bit, and you can see a quote from the president of the American Society of Civil Engineers. Take this for what it's worth, but it seems to confirm some of the things that we're discussing today. So going on to in-house design and ACHD's in-house design capabilities, and we have Matt Deegan here, the manager of our safety team, and the in-house design team falls underneath him, and he's here to answer any other questions. But I'll talk a little bit about historically how we've used in-house design, what our kind of current and future plans are for our in-house design capabilities. Historically, it's been about 10% of ACHD overall design efforts have been completed in-house. So if you have, let's say, 10 major projects under design, historically, a roadway, an intersection, major community programs, one of those was being completed with our in-house design forces on an annual basis in some stage or another. So there's 6 FTEs that are currently supporting, that did support those projects. And even then, when we do in-house design, I want to make it clear that we're still hiring consultants to help us with those projects. Things like bridges, signals, retaining walls, geotechnical investigation. ACHD doesn't have the in-house design capability to perform some of those tasks. So even if you have an in-house design project, if there's a major bridge within that project, we have to hire a consultant. If there's a complicated retaining wall, we have to hire a consultant because it's very specific expertise that is required for certain structural elements within projects. There are 3 additional FTEs currently advertised as approved through the Commission for the overall safety team. Those FTEs, none of those have been hired yet. They're just out for advertisement. Going forward, the focus of the in-house design efforts is really going to be not on major capital projects like roadways or intersection. The focus is going to shift to the rapid and safety projects that have been identified by the Commission. The school flashers and crossings. The project that was just brought up tonight is a perfect example of a project where, because ACHD's in-house design is a little bit more nimble on a smaller project like that, they're able to get started and get moving quickly, where if we had to hire a consultant and go through that process and it would just take longer. So really that's the idea behind where the in-house design resources are headed. So going into future years, there's really no major projects that are going to fall. When I say major projects, major intersection and roadway projects or even large community programs projects, those will not go to our in-house design team. They'll be focused on these other types of projects. Just for your information, an average FTE to bring on to fulfill design style responsibilities at one level or another, about $150,000 a year fully loaded. And we do believe it's unlikely that we're going to be able to find a ton of applicants that would be qualified to fill those positions. I was talking to Matt, and he mentioned this yesterday, that over the last several years, as we've tried to fill design positions, the position has typically been filled in-house, and the person who has filled the position has required pretty significant training to get up to full speed to be able to fulfill the responsibilities. And so it's been really, really challenging. So some of the key takeaways and thoughts from today, we certainly acknowledge consultant design costs have increased over the last 5 years. There's no doubt about that. I think we've been a little shocked too. Some of the sticker price has been a little shocking. And I remember on one project specifically, it was about 8 or 9 months ago, where we actually terminated negotiations with a consultant because it just felt like it was too high. And after, letting that consultant go, renegotiating with another, and then a few months later, we realized, Diane and I, that, wow, these prices are just high. They just have gone up. And it was kind of shocking, but that's kind of what we've been seeing in the market. We do believe the reason for this is market conditions, no doubt about it. Also, the increased project complexity that we have here at the Highway District and the elements that we're including. I want to assure you that we scrutinize and carefully negotiate every single design contract. There is no proposal from a consultant that comes to ACHD as a proposed amount of hours that is not significantly negotiated and discussed. It's never happened as long as I've been here, where a consultant says, here's the hours, here's the numbers, and this is what you're going to pay, and we just sign on the dotted line. That's not how it works at all. We take that, we negotiate it very carefully. Oftentimes we're cutting out many hours and we're bringing down that cost as far as we can. And it's a negotiation with every single project.
Madam President,
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
hearing that, and I know how frustrated I am as well as I can imagine you, it sounds to me like if we were to put these out to bid, it might actually be to our disadvantage.
Yeah, Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe. So our process, we have an on-call list with about 20 to 25 qualified consultants that can do a broad range of projects. There's some others that do smaller things. And we negotiate with those consultants off of that on-call list. But we don't just select one and go with them. We select three. We go through a scoring process to determine which of those three we're going to enter negotiations with. We take into account the consultant's workload with ACHD. We have discussions and phone calls with the consultants. Can you take this project? Recently, for the first time in my tenure, we've had consultants tell us, yeah, we're not even interested in negotiating on the project. So that's kind of new, where they're so fully loaded that there's some of that going on. I wouldn't say a lot of that, but it's starting to creep in where the workload is so high that they're not able to, they're basically saying, I mean, if you really want to negotiate, we'll do it, but look somewhere else first. And so that's the market right now that we're dealing with. And so, yeah, Commissioner Goldthorpe, I really believe you. I believe it's a true statement. Those types of negotiations we think are very successful. If we go out through the full RFP process, for the consultant, it takes a lot of work to prepare those RFP packages. They go into a competitive situation where they're not even sure if they're going to get it. Recently, on a major project, which is the Fairview Avenue Bridge, a federal aid project, we went out for an RFP. One responded. And that's another example of the market right now. And so those are things we have to be aware of and we're dealing with. Now, this ebbs and flows, and with economic conditions and as Idaho grows and there's more, when there's this amount of work, there's more people coming to the area, we're hopeful that this will, not persist for too long, but that's the current challenge we're facing. So that's kind of a summary of where we are today. I'm glad to answer any questions that you may have, but thank you for the opportunity tonight to present that.
Justin, you did great. Great surrogate for Diane. And I think, obviously you explained this, but I think I want to just sum it up. We're really stuck between a rock and a hard place, because it's like we can't necessarily just say, oh, we're going to hire our way out of this problem, right? Because we can't do that. To work around the consultants' limitations and the capacity issues that they have. So I think you are doing a great job. You and the team are doing a great job navigating, and I know that you're negotiating and we're trying to get the best value for the cost for these projects. And I think that's the biggest thing that we've got to keep in mind. But commissioners, other questions or thoughts? Commissioner
Madam President, Justin, it seems to me we've been talking about design and consultant costs, and when we pair that with the changes in construction costs themselves, my sort of impression has been over the last 4 or 5 years that it's almost like total project costs are kind of, feels like they've doubled from 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe that's just my, overestimated sense of things, but they've gone up a lot, and it strikes me that, this is more a comment than a question, but there are cases where I think we as a commission and the district ought to consider, in certain cases, reducing the complexity of projects just so we can get more done. And I know the one and done is very attractive, and in the long run, it's great. But sometimes there's, if we can solve 3 problems over the next 2 years instead of just 2, even though they're not perfect, even though the result is not something that we consider perfect, sometimes good enough is good enough, and you move on, because especially in an area that's growing so quickly, sometimes we have to look at that and say, that's the best we're going to do. Let's go forward with it. Anyway, that's my thought there.
Yeah, Madam President and
Commissioner Hanson.
Justin, thank you. As we're working on this, the building trades have gone through the same thing. We have improved our building codes. We don't build buildings like we did in the past. Many buildings we have to go back and rebuild. There's buildings get torn down that are, 10, 15 years old. Our infrastructure is there for lifetimes. There's still concrete sidewalks with the date 1920 that is still perfectly functional. So what we're investing is for the long term. That's why I think it's so important as we learn about why it's important to have safe infrastructure, that we've incorporated that. And we understand, and what you said early on is the long-term value, we're talking about very long-term, has to be in our sites. And we have to constantly look at that. It's also a public asset. We are holding it in trust for the public. And so it's our obligation to make sure when we go in that one time, that our investment enhances the value of that. The people want to be there, that they feel safe living, driving, working, recreating in that area, and that we don't just say, well, because the costs are low, we'll just do minimal compliance with the ADA and a couple other things and move on, because we won't get back to it. And so I think it's really important. And that's why I think when consultants are looking at that, they're sensing, is this an agency that's really going to insist on the long-term safest possible design? Or is this one where we can get away with something a little cheaper? And I want them to think, no, this is the agency that is setting the standard for the best infrastructure. And then we can go tell other cities, look, we did this really good stuff in Ada County, and this is what we're capable of. So yeah, we do go in once, we do it right. So much of our safety that you guys have developed modern designs and are incorporating them becomes self-enforcing, so that we're not like, well, let's figure out how to do this so that then, we can save costs and then leave it up to the police to come in there and enforce speeding or parking too close to a curb or all these other things. Our safety can be self-enforcing. We've come up with designs that say this is how this street becomes more livable and more valuable. And so I'm hoping that costs are going up, but costs for all kinds of things are going up. But the long-term value has to constantly be there. And I hope that collectively we can say we're going to always strive for the safest possible engineering and design, and then understand how the costs, as we go in that one time, are going to reap benefits for 100 years.
Commissioner Goldberg?
Yeah, I appreciate this. I've, to some degree, however little or much, when I first became a member of this commission, one of the first jokes I think I ever told was to make a comment about why don't we just do it once and done. And, I was appreciative of how much laughter that caused around here. But then all of a sudden, after a lot of smart people who are smarter than I am gave it a lot more thought than I did, it looked like something that could be done. And the things that we weren't doing 15 years ago were causing greater problems than I believe the cost of getting them done once, and including the creation of more sidewalk gaps. And I'll probably have someone put that on the back of my headstone someday. But I hate what we're paying for a lot of stuff. In a past life, I used to give a lot of seminars on investing. And part of those seminars were always a discussion about inflation, which is pretty much caused by government. And then I read an interesting article last week. I think it came out of Forbes or Barron's about a new term that's just been coined called greedflation, which was adding another component into the reason we're paying so much more for so many things today that we were not 5 years ago. And, I'm understanding that there might be a little bit of that in what we're dealing with design, but the expansion of what we're asking people to do, which I can understand very quickly causes the additional hours. That sounds reasonable to me. I sit there thinking about all of this a lot. And then I look at it when we start doing our budget discussions about how little, not just how little we've raised taxes over the years for roads, but how little people actually have to pay, period, in taxes for roads. And it never became more clear to me than one day after having a fairly serious and not all that pleasant discussion with a couple of my libertarian buddies about who pays for the roads. They got their tax assessments, and without batting an eye, they both called me up and then made it very public on social media that there was a problem because they didn't figure that they were paying enough. And yet we don't take that as a clue or as a cue that perhaps we should do something about that. We're going to see the Biden bucks, as I love to call them, disappear, and not in the very far future. I've been grateful that we haven't obligated ourselves for anything more than maintenance in the long term of these particular projects that are being paid for with the money that's causing that part of inflation, and hope we don't ever do that. But we got to figure out how to keep the ball rolling in the near, mid, and long term around here, or if this inflation continues, pretty soon we won't be doing anything more than chip sealing and writing paychecks. And that sounds ridiculous, and I kind of like to make things sound ridiculous because then people understand, but I don't want to see something like that happen here. Thanks.
Commissioner Gold?
Yeah, thanks. Thank you, Justin, for that presentation, and for explaining, what we can design in-house versus what is better to go out and get a consultant on design, and the realities of what we're facing in a quickly growing area, competing with other agencies and developers and things for the same kinds of folks. Obviously, as we're growing, the complexity of our projects and the complexity of the network has changed with the youth and population. And so while sometimes, and like you said, more and more often, the sticker price is a little shocking, I really appreciate you explaining why. So thanks.
Thanks, Justin.
Madam President, members of the commission, thank you. For accuracy, I think I said the one consultant was on Fairview. It was actually the Eckert Bridge, and that was my mistake. But it came to me as I was thinking. Both big projects. I got the two bridges twisted in my head, so thank you.
Okay. All right, well, with that, we're done for the evening. We'll see you in February.